Hi, and welcome to another edition or episode of the Leadership Enigma. My word, I've done so many of these. Are they editions or are they episodes? I don't know. Thought for another day. I have got the wonderful Tom Lyas with me today, who is the talent acquisition manager from the law firm Browne Jacobson. Why am I speaking to Tom? Well, social mobility is a massive theme for all of us as leaders, whatever sized business. It's something that's true to my heart. We think about how do we lead inclusively? How do we lead from a human-centered approach? And there is no one better for me to talk to than Tom Lyas. You do not want to miss this episode because Browne Jacobson were voted the #1 in the UK social mobility employer. So if someone's got the answers, I reckon Tom's got the answers. Come back to me just after this.
You're listening to The Leadership Enigma, powered by Transform Performance International, a podcast for the insatiably curious to explore the power of human-centered leadership to create real momentum for positive and sustainable change. Whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or corporate executive, each week we speak to global experts, academics, rising stars, ambitious upstarts, and disruptors as we discover that success leaves clues. Now, here's your host, Adam Pacifico.
It's a big warm welcome to you, Tom, on the Leadership Enigma. Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks ever so much for having me, Adam.
I love that particular intro. It kind of sets us up, I hope, for enormous success. We're now in the 80s in relation to how many episodes we've done, so it's a real pleasure to have you. And I gave you the big intro because I've been looking forward to this one because you are the talent acquisition manager for Browne Jacobson, the law firm. Tell us a little bit about that role, and then I'll get a little bit more from you about your story to that role. But tell us a little bit about that role.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and yeah, thanks for the big up, basically. So yeah, I'm Tom. I basically lead recruitment, across all areas for Browne Jacobson. So top 50 UK law firm.
Yep.
Everything from an administrator through to a full equity partner is hired by myself and my team. In addition to the day job, as I would describe it, I also have to make sure that people are integrated into the firm in the right way. There's no point in attracting great talent and then losing it in your first 3 months if you don't embed them and onboard them properly. But where my real passion has sort of come through, in addition to the day job, is I'm part of our diversity and inclusion committee.
Yep.
But I also am the firm's lead on social mobility, and that's the strategy, but also the initiatives in which we roll out and have done so for a number of years now.
Okay, Tom, let me start with a really basic question, and forgive me for this. What do we mean, or what do you mean by social mobility? Because I reckon there are people who hear that term, but perhaps aren't quite sure about what it means or what it needs to mean to them and their organizations.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, it's a term that's obviously grown, up the sort of strategic priority list very quickly for a lot of organizations out there, be it legal or otherwise. But effectively, I mean, social mobility in its nutshell is doing better than your parents. It really is that. We have obviously different social classes within the UK, and this is looking at trying to move between the two different classes. So you'll see a lot of, Social Mobility Foundation as a charity is a good example. Their logo is a ladder, and it is absolutely about moving individuals from different classes and doing better than your parents, basically.
Are we still thought of as the UK as quite a class-driven country? Are we seen as a very class-driven country still, do you think, but both within our fair island and externally?
I mean, this is personal, but I mean, I live in Nottingham, so I'm almost right in the middle. I'm Nottingham born and bred. I was lucky enough to move down south. I say lucky. Yep. Had 10 years down in London. And now I'm back in Nottingham, currently sat in the not so sunny kitchen, looking at the weather outside. But there is a divide in the UK, I think, between north and south. And more often than not, those in the Midlands and the north would typically, they probably feel more aligned to a working class background, and those in the south seem to indicate that there would be more focused towards a middle class.
Okay. And, I lived in Manchester for many years. Now, I know we're going further north, but some of our most thriving cities are really northern cities, aren't they? I think. I mean, I've been in London and born and bred, but I would agree with you that perhaps sometimes we miss some of the gems that are north of Watford, dare I say it.
The north, as is often described on the motorway
yeah,
line.
I know anything post the M25 ridiculously. Now, I know you are passionate about this particular subject, and you are doing amazing things. The reason I wanted to chat to you is you're a trailblazer in this area, this important area. How did you come to find yourself so passionate and in this role? Because you live and breathe this role. So there's a bit of a journey to it, Tom. How did that happen?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always interesting. I mean, just, I understand that, I'm not from a working class background. People could quite easily challenge and say, well, why are you bothered about stuff like this? What's it to you? You professional parents, and you've had it to some extent relatively sort of easy in terms of your upbringing, and I absolutely appreciate that. Where my social mobility journey started was a good 10 years ago. So I've been in recruitment for nigh on 2 decades now. I think I first got into it in 2002, something like that. When I first started, I was in the agency side, and it's quite a transactional role. Companies come to you, say, I need somebody, and you have a pool of candidates, and you place them, and that to some extent is the role of a recruitment agent, albeit many out there will probably say, no, it's much more than that. When I first moved in-house, which was, I think, around 2009, 2010, I joined Tesco, which was absolutely incredible. So they're based in Welwyn Garden City in Hertfordshire, and effectively I moved in-house, and I, for the first time, not only just filled jobs, but then you see the people come through the front door, you get to know them, you work with them, and in due course, ultimately, if they progress, you start to recruit for their own teams. I think working for a company of the size of Tesco, back then it was, I think when I was there, it was 503,000 employees in the UK.
Extraordinary, isn't it?
And yes, it's extraordinary. Interestingly, many people at the time were like, it's too big and it's a bit of a monolith, and actually it's taken over the world. Some might just say that's success and ambition. But what I realized is it's not the damage to the high street that some people would say that they do. It's the positive impact of an employer of that size can have when it really turns its attention to things that matter. So I was at Tesco for about 5 years, culminating with me, and initially I led the recruitment within the real estate department. I used to recruit graduates specifically to work in property, so it could be architects, engineers, etc., etc. My performance in that area seemed to sort of outweigh my peers in terms of the quality of graduates we got, the diversity of graduates that I would get. Culminating in maybe 2 or 3 years later, I was asked to lead graduate recruitment for Tesco full stop, and we used to have 42 different graduate programs across 13 different countries. We used to have a volume of hire that was maybe 500-600 graduates a year, but also 500 or 600 interns and placement students.
Huge numbers.
They're massive numbers, and when you see something on that scale, you start to see what the trends are. And I not only through my own perception, but also through the hiring managers, we started to feel that the graduates were what we described as cookie cutter, and they all seemed to be the same. And I was like, well, the reality is, we do what every other big, FTSE 100 organization does, is we go to the top 20 universities in the UK. We don't really look at talent beyond that. And then we put on very, very high academic bars. So you must have a 2-1 degree and an A and 2 Bs at A level to even apply for a graduate program in Tesco.
It's so competitive.
It's unbelievably competitive, but it sort of just felt a little bit hollow. Don't get me wrong, there's some amazing individuals there, but there was, what was missing is what I now know as diversity, that potentially 10 years ago I didn't really know that's what it was.
Right.
So we made a decision. We said, look, what happens if we take off the requirements at academics? Is the world going to stop? Are we going to destroy our talent pipeline?
I bet a number of people hyperventilated at that point. Tom?
I mean, like anything, change is, you get your trailblazers, and then you get those that are slightly more resistant to change. I mean, from our side, it was quite hard sell initially, but as always, because we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. So anyway, we decided, actually, let's take off academics. You can apply with any degree classification. It doesn't matter about your A levels.
Right.
And very quickly, within 12 months or 24 months, we saw a completely different set of trainees coming through. What that looked like is that, the diversity obviously changed. We were assessing people on things that weren't just academics, and actually seeing a fundamental difference to the junior talent that was coming through. I'm going to skip forward quite quickly through these next couple of bits. So I was with Tesco 5 years. I then moved to Whitbread, based in Bedfordshire, at the time known for two big brands, Premier Inn and Costa Coffee. And again, was leading the graduate recruitment, within Whitbread. Didn't think anything of removing academics again. So take off the 2-1, take off the A and 2B's requirement, because I'd seen it done incredibly successfully at Tesco, and I'd seen the difference that it makes. And equally, both retail and hospitality, you're likely, if you're talking about people working in shops and working in retail and delivering in hospitality, with the utmost respect, there's some incredible talent there, but they're not always the most academically successful, if that's the right term, candidates. In which case, if you start whacking incredibly high academic bars onto a recruitment process, you're going to lose and miss out on some incredible talent. So again, successfully implemented that at Whitbread. Fast forward to 2016. This is when I first came into the law, and this is where things again got quite interesting.
I bet.
So I joined as I said, to lead the recruitment, June 6th, 2016. Didn't think anything, because I've now seen it at two organisations. I've taken the academic criteria off, seen great results as an outcome of making those decisions. So I took off, as I said, this is where it gets quite interesting. I took off the need for a 2-1 or an A and 2Bs to apply for a training contract.
Within a law firm?
Within a law firm, exactly. Now, this is where, a valuable lesson for both me and the law firm comes about. So we do this, we do our recruitment, and we make some fantastic hires. In law, you're typically offering a contract about 2 or 3 years in advance of them actually starting.
Yes.
So fast forward to, I think, 2018 it was, and one of the partners was like, look, I've got my new trainee has started. They're absolutely brilliant, but what were the mitigating circumstances? So I was like, okay, what do you mean? And they said, well, they've got a 2-2, and very clearly we don't take candidates with 2-2s. So I said, let's focus on the first part of that conversation. They're absolutely fantastic. So you're telling me I've got a great one. I then explained and said, look, we did 2 years ago make the decision to remove 2-1 and A and 2Bs, because we don't believe it's a good predictor of future performance in a role. So that's what we did. At that point, the partner walked off and thought, okay, fine, fair enough. Within 5 minutes, the phone was going, and it was my boss, who was the head of HR, and was saying, can you tell me about this removal of academics? Because I've just had a very angry partner on the phone. And I said, look, I knew this was coming. And we talked about it with my boss. I was then called to a board meeting to go and explain what I'd done.
Was this summoned at this point, Tom?
Summoned is probably the right term. Yeah. I mean, it was a strongly worded request.
A subpoena.
Subpoena. I've been subpoenaed by my own board. Say, come on, you need to come and explain yourself. So anyway, fast forward, that was put in for a couple of months' time. And I knew, as I said, it was an educated guess from my side, and I knew the data would be there and was there, because the first thing I do is
Thankfully, you've done it.
I'd done it. I knew from day one that I needed to capture the data, because data is absolutely at the heart of everything that's social mobility, and I'm sure we'll come on to that shortly.
Well, it's like evidence as well. Lawyers like evidence, don't they, Tom? So you were right in your thinking.
They're tangible, exactly. Give me facts, figures, pounds, pence, whatever it is, but give me something that's real, and not finger in the air. So anyway, at this point, went into the board meeting, an hour or so before. A couple of partners that I know very well were kind of like, "Are you okay? You're going to be all right with this? We've got you back." But I think they're a bit angry. I was absolutely cool as a cucumber because I knew I'd done the research and I knew I had the data that I needed. So basically went into the board and they were like, "Well, your paper's quite short. There's only 3 points on it." And I was like, "Yeah, that's because there's only 3 points you need to know."
Right.
So the first discussion point was,
Right,
okay,
these are the 3 points. I want us to get ready as you share these, because these are nuggets that you've learned the hard way, Tom. So let's get ready for these 3 points.
Yeah. So effectively, the first question that I had for the then operational board was, look, what is success? What do we define as what's the most successful role you can have in a law firm? And without doubt, of course, it was around the table. Well, being a partner, that's the promised land. This is it. You need to be a partner. So it's like, okay, so you're telling me that being a partner is the most successful thing you can do in a law firm? Yes, we're absolutely there. Second point was, okay, we used to ask for 2-1 and an A and 2 Bs at A level. Why? And at this point, fair to say the tumbleweed was kind of knocking around.
Church bells.
Well, yeah. After a little bit of stunned silence, basically we got into the point that a few people said, "Well, it's what every law firm does," and I was like, "Okay, remember that phrase because we will come back to that." And then the final one, and this is where I sort of had my I won't call it the grand reveal, but at the time we had
I feel I should have a drum roll here, Tom.
Yeah, I think we had about 109 partners, and I'd done my sort of, I'd been around and done my research, and basically I'd spoken to, I think it was about 80 or 90 of the 109 partners, and then I explained to them, I said, "Did you know that 1 in 5, 20% of our partners has a 2-2? And wouldn't even be able to apply for their own graduate scheme, yet you're telling me at the start of this meeting that a partner is the most successful talent we have."
Oh, there's the killer blow, Tom.
So at this point, it's fair to say the wry smile started to come out.
Right.
The penny dropped that I was like, look, academics will not hold you back. They will not hold you back. So it was a really sort of, a seminal moment for Browne Jacobson and for a few people there to say, look, okay,
love this story.
You've proved that academics don't make, don't get me wrong, this is not a beat down on those who went to brilliant universities and have first, it leads on to the point that I encouraged Browne Jacobson at that time is we need to start looking at people in context. So their academic achievements need to be done in context. And I think that then sort of subsequently moves us on to maybe the next point. That was the first point, how I convinced the firm that removing of academic criteria in 2016 was the right thing to do.
I love this story, and this is one of the reasons I just had to have you on the show, because it's an enormous amount of courage. Yes, you had been through it before, so you had the evidence required, but let's just make it very clear to anybody listening that that's not an easy environment. You were up against 110 odd partners of one of the biggest law firms who have certain ways of doing things. And you were challenging all that they had thought was the way of doing things.
Yep.
And let me shuttle forward a bit more. You are now the recipient, aren't you, that the firm has been voted the #1 social mobility employer in the UK. That's right, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, so the Social Mobility Foundation, as I said, kind of the #1 charity. They do an employer ranking, an index as they call it, open to any employer, not just law firms, but any sector. We as of November 2021, we're ranked #1 in that employer index.
Listen, that's amazing, isn't it? And that's an amazing accolade to you. I know you've been the real champion and driver of that, but also it's a huge congratulations to the firm, who were also maybe courageous enough as well to say, listen, let's go with this and let's embrace this.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it's if you've got time, I'll tell you a little story, actually.
I love a story.
So you're right. I mean, basically the index has been going for about 6 years, the first 5 of which PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers have been top of this. Quite rightly, they're doing incredible things in that space.
Right.
When we never entered it in the first 3 years. We weren't aware it existed, and it slowly built up over time. The first year we entered it would have been 2019, and we were ranked 82nd. So you basically submit at the time it was a 20-page document with lots and lots of facts and figures about kind of where you're at and what you're doing. And the top 75 is incredibly well publicized. So this the sort of
That's a big
things
deal.
that, so Sarah Atkinson, who's the current CEO, an incredible individual, credible leader at the Social Mobility Foundation, she will go on the national press and announce this.
Right.
So it's a big deal. It's nice to be part of it. So we were disappointed in the first year to miss out on the top 75.
Yep.
But what I would say is anybody thinking of, if social mobility matters to you, get yourself.
And it must. Let's be honest, and it must matter.
Yeah, get a report. Submit an application to the index, because only good things can happen. One is that you'll be ranked, and you'll see where you sit, and kind of whether you're doing good things or whether you need to do more. But actually, the Social Mobility Foundation is brilliant because it gives you a really detailed, bespoke report that actually, when we got it as ranked 82nd, that was our instruction manual for the next year, and said,
that's your to-do list, isn't it?
Here's what we need to change. We need to do this. We need to do that, etc. In 2020, we actually ranked 5th. So we were an enormous jump. Now, I think some of that, we most suspect to my colleagues, is I don't think we really knew how to fill out the actual forms. So I don't think we were ever sort of 82nd, but we were on our journey. So we moved from 82nd to 5th. And then this year, as I said, achieving a 5th place is an incredible achievement for a firm our size. We're 1,000 people, 90 million turnover. I have to say, and you look at some of the people that are in that top, the Clifford Chance, Herbert Smith Freehills, KPMG, PwC, these are
heavyweights.
These are proper heavyweights. And then you've got us, the little guy. But anyway, to my short little story. So I felt incredible pressure. I'm not going to lie. We had this 5th place ranking, and I was thinking, oh my Lord, how are we going to keep hold of this? We've done amazing things. I felt we've punched above our weight. So anyway, I was in a meeting, strangely enough, with Ollie, who's our head of D&I, and my mobile phone rings, rings reasonably regularly, given the nature of the job. But it was a number I didn't recognise, and I thought, I'll let it go to voicemail. I then see in the bottom of my screen, I saw an email pop up, and it said Social Mobility Foundation. This was in, I don't know, maybe September of last year. And I thought, they never tell you when they're actually going to reveal kind of what your ranking is.
Okay.
So anyway, I said, look, I might have to log off because I've just seen that we've got an email from Social Mobility Foundation asking us to get in touch with them. And I was thinking, I don't know if that's going to be good news or bad news. So I was thinking, here comes the difficult second album, as they describe.
Reveal.
Yeah, the reveal. So anyway, then I saw, I saw the transcript of the voicemail in the email, and it said, Sarah Atkinson, Chief Exec of Social Mobility Foundation, said, I've got an update on your ranking, and I think I probably need to speak to you. And I thought, oh my God, like we're going to kick us out of this thing or something. So anyway, my heart was absolutely going. So anyway, I phoned Sarah, and she said, oh, it's Sarah, do you know who I am? I was like, I absolutely know who you are. And she said, look, we've been kicking the tires around for, on the top 10 of the index. And I thought, I was like, amazing. Like, are we going to be in the top 10 again?
Yeah.
And she said, look, we just keep coming back to the great work that you guys are doing. And she said, I'm pleased to let you know that you're ranked number 1. I don't think in my life I've been lost for words, but I could not actually get the words out. I almost fell off the chair, and I was like, you are kidding. You are, I think I said that about 10 times, but it was just
nice news to have.
It was incredible news. And I think it was more the fact that, the great thing about the work we've done in social mobility is that, whether it's the awards we've won, whether it's the rankings we've received, these things are always assessed and judged by external, genuine experts that would not do these.
Validation, isn't it, Tom?
It's pure validation, and it's incredibly, it's been an incredible journey so far, but we've barely scratched the surface.
And I know we're barely scratching the surface in this episode. Just tell me a little bit about some of the impact that you've seen in the firm as a result of this strategy. So yes, you've been looked at as number 1, held up as number 1. What are you seeing internally within the firm? Because I'm a big proponent of leading inclusively, and diversity and inclusion is something that is not a tick box. It's got to be part and parcel of the DNA. And having that diversity of thought makes us better. What are you seeing inside Browne Jacobson?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things. So the statistics, of which I'll give you some very, very stark facts. And this is why, this is where, whenever I'm asked to speak to anyone, and I'm regularly contacted by other law firms or other employers saying, what can we do? And, I can only advise them what they might do, whether they do it and implement it, or they're as open to change. And as our leadership team has been, that's for them. But there is the stark facts, but then there is the feel. There is absolutely what is changing culturally, and that's something that you can't always put into facts and figures, which,
Right.
as I say, sometimes is uncomfortable for a lawyer. I mean, by the time I went to the 2018 board meeting, as I said, the statistics were pretty poor for us in general. So when I joined, as I said, June 2016,
Yep.
Our junior population, so our trainees were, from 100% came from Russell Group universities.
Wow.
Only 7% were Black, Asian, or minority ethnic, and it was just.
Well, those are two telling statistics in themselves, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. And so you think, right, okay, this is a problem. Now, social mobility doesn't always directly change those things, but fast forward each year, I mean, we have seen a steady increase since we took off the academic criteria we're as of 2022, so literally the latest intake, I mean, we're 45% Black, Asian, minority ethnic. Amazing. And I think off the top of my head, I think that went from 7 to 18 between 2016, it was 18% in 2017, then 29%, and it's steadily increased.
Okay.
In terms of the ethnicity, and that's been a fantastic fact. What we've also seen is, we're now 50-50 in terms of Russell Group and non-Russell Group. One of the biggest challenges from Social Mobility Foundation's report is that law firms say they are using their outreach and they're going and approaching students in far more diverse universities, non-Russell Group, etc. But they're not hiring from those. So they're getting in the process, but they are not.
They're not being successful.
They're not being successful, and that's either because they don't know how to be, and law firms aren't providing the right support during the recruitment process. But equally, I mean, from our side, 30% of offers are now made to students who would never have previously been able to apply. Right. So that's 30%. I mean, you only have to go on the internet or read a paper to know that we're currently in a war for talent. And I'm
going to come on to that.
Yeah, it's my day job, my team's day job, to recruit talent to the firm is bloody difficult. The last thing we want to be doing is cutting out the opportunity for people who genuinely can get these jobs. So of the 30%, and this is perhaps the most telling, is the question when you remove any academic grades, any lawyer will say, does the quality drop? We've seen that of the individuals, the 30% who don't have the grades that would have been previously required, those 30%, 70% of those 30% are achieving the highest exceptional rating in their end of year reviews. Wow. So that puts them in the top 5% of the firm's talent.
The partners of the future.
Exactly, and whatever they go to do. But I mean, the second part, Adam, is you cannot underestimate the feel and the change to the culture that this has had. I mean, that is where I get my energy. I mean, there are lots of people saying very nice things about us. That isn't what we do it for. But what really matters is I cannot tell you how many people have come up and said, you know what, I've had to mask the fact that I actually didn't get great grades, or I've had to mask or hide the fact that I am from a working class background, because if otherwise I fear I won't fit in and I'll be chucked out. This sort of removal of the stigma that actually I haven't got great grades or I'm from a working class background, that for me has just been a revelation, because people can now be their authentic selves in the same way that we say about, if whatever your background is, if it's a different ethnicity or minority ethnic, or you've got a disability, all of the stigma that sometimes people feel with that, people do feel with social class. And it's like we're taking that veil away, and it's absolutely brilliant to see.
And Tom, this is so important, because you kind of alluded to the great attrition, and a lot of companies and sectors now are facing that problem. And how do you identify and nurture and retain great talent? Because there's opportunity for great talent, and they can vote with their feet and leave, or they have a plethora perhaps of options that they can take. What you're describing to me is the kind of culture that a lot of the younger generation would like to work in. one of inclusivity, one that is a force for good, one that is diverse in nature, and one that doesn't have stigma attached to it, that anyone and everyone, as long as capable, can come. And so that's a big piece of the culture, isn't it? Now, I assume, of Browne Jacobson.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, one of the biggest things, and again, I appreciate the, I could genuinely talk. You're going to have to do a lot of editing because I could talk to you for hours on this.
We'll do another episode, Tom.
Yeah. This is going to be a mini series, I think. So. I mean, there are so many things that we have put in place, and just to be crystal clear, this is. We have not spent a lot of money on this. We may have spent less than £30,000 in 5 years changing things, and when I refer back to the names that I've just referred to that are up there in that list as well, they may spend that in a meeting. It's one of those things. So this is why social mobility is so important, because anybody can make changes if you're willing to. This is not a cost exercise, but I suppose from our side, one of the biggest things that I'm lucky enough to have is the support of our leadership team, is that there is no direct return on investment for any of the activity I've done. So a second moment in time, we've talked about kind of the removal of the academic criteria. The second biggest moment in the journey, the social mobility journey for Browne Jacobson, was back in 2019, when we didn't have a centrally controlled work experience program. And work experience is I hate to say the root of all evil in terms of barriers into a career in law, but I tell you, it plays a significant part. So we like I said, we used to let each department just crack on and say, if you want to bring someone in, bring them in, just capture it, make sure health and safety, all of the tick box stuff. It got to the point where a client's son had arrived one Monday morning, and somebody had forgotten. They'd actually forgotten that they'd offered this person's son some work experience. So they were like, last 2 minutes notice. It was like, can we look after them for 3 days? And it was like, okay, so this person just got dropped by the side of somebody's desk.
Yes.
We made sure they had a good experience, but at that point, said partner lost their stuff basically, and said, look, somebody needs to basically get hold of this. So I put my hands up and I said, look, I'm happy. Work experience, love it. I'm happy to put my arms around it and see if I can create something that stops this disruption. So we had this massive spreadsheet. This spreadsheet dated back 4 or 5 years, and I was absolutely delighted to see that we offered 80 students on average a year. And I was like, this is
That's
great.
a lot.
I didn't know that we offered that many work experience places, and I'm the person who's meant to be responsible for recruitment. But the killer statistic within that was that 96% of that 80 were either client or partner's children.
Right.
And there was no room for anybody else. There was no opportunity. So that was like okay, we have a problem here. We're no better or worse than most of the law firms. So I genuinely went home that night, and I just, as I said, I am passionate about social mobility, have been for a decade, because I've seen so much talent go to waste, given that I am at the sharp end of, do you get the job or do you not? Do you get?
And you've seen the results, Tom. You've seen the positive results.
And I've seen. I do not want to even say how easy it is to get results, but I've seen how easy it is to remove certain parts of a process if you're just brave enough to say, scrap it, we don't need it. But anyway, I went home that evening and I genuinely went to bed, and it was I remember like it was yesterday. It was on my mind, and I woke up 1:30 in the morning. I've still got the email now, and I was like, right, I think I've got an idea. It's a really cheesy acronym, but it's FAIR. And I was like, if what we're doing is not currently fair, then what is fair?
F.A.I.R.E, isn't it, Tom?
It's F.A.I.R.E, yeah. Okay, so and that stands for fairer access into real experience.
Right.
I mean, it was better than my other one, which was going to be a social initiative, getting more people legal experience. But I realised that's been spelt simple, so I thought, no, I'm not going to go with that one.
We went with FAIR instead.
I'll trademark that before anyone else does. So I went with FAIR because it was just like, look, if that's not fair, this is fair, and it is about giving fairer access. And I emailed myself 1:30 in the morning, walked in next morning. Caroline Green, who's our senior partner, Declan Vaughan, who's our people director.
Yeah.
I just said, I've got an idea and I need to speak to you. literally, they dropped everything. I spoke to them and I said, look, if we are genuinely serious about social mobility, then from today, we are going to create a program called F.A.I.R.E. It will be 80 work experience places, but we absolutely, as a minimum, 50% of those need to be given to low socioeconomic students, underrepresented backgrounds, because it absolutely cannot be that the majority goes to those who don't really need it. Mum and dad are connected, they can get you this experience anyway. So that's where F.A.I.R.E, our sort of flagship program, was born. And I guess very shortly after we'd conceived that idea, the pandemic hit maybe 6 months later. So our grand plans to bring 80 people into in-person work experience had to be shelved for obvious reasons.
Yeah, of course.
But this is where I think we've really benefited in the last 12 or 18 months or so. Is the classic is when, I don't think I'm allowed to swear on this podcast, so I'll be careful.
I have to tick a different box, Tom. So yeah,
yeah, I won't. So when the Browne stuff hit the fan in the world, as it did,
yep.
I think somebody's credentials, you get the opportunity to show what you're really about when you don't have to do something.
Right.
I think it's the classic cliche of, it's how you behave when there's no one else in the room.
That's culture.
Now, we could have dropped this. We could have dropped our social mobility agenda so easily, but we didn't. We accelerated it during the pandemic, because this is when it really bites. It's hard enough for low socioeconomic individuals to get a chance in normal times, let alone in a pandemic. So we couldn't do in-person work experience. So we took a decision. I said, you know what? Why don't we try and do something online? Let's try and see if we can get some speakers.
Yeah.
Let's try and put something on for a couple of days and just give them something back. Is there anything for the firm? No, there's not. This is going to cost you $2 or $3 grand to pay for a Zoom license. But I just think it's the right thing to do. And I managed to convince the firm that actually there's no benefit here. We're not trying to recruit people. If we are serious about social mobility, we're going to put something on that's going to give them access to opportunity, access to contacts, and access to knowledge. And if they use that to go and get a job or a training contract at another law firm or in-house or as a barrister's chambers, so be it. So I prepped our marketing team, and they were a bit like, oh, actually we've got lots to do, and so I had some good support, but I sort of said, look, I think it'll be, we might get a few hundred students on it, but I think there's something here. Everyone's in lockdown, and I think we can do something good. So anyway, we did some marketing around it, as again, used the networks that we had, because we had to beg, steal, and borrow.
Yep.
And I remember logging on that morning to the Zoom call, and obviously in the bottom corner it says number of participants. And I remember someone counting down saying, we'll go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Within 34 seconds, that number read 7,120 students. And I was like, I kind of was like,
another moment you are speechless, Tom.
Literally, it was almost second one. I couldn't be speechless because I had to then deliver a welcome to the F.A.I.R.E event. But what it did was, it ripped, and I absolutely mean this, ripped the cover off social mobility in law. This was the largest ever legal live work experience event. We had messages from LinkedIn saying, you're currently in the top 1% trending and engagement. But what it did was it made other law firms sit up and listen. They were like, wow, okay, we need to do more. And that actually, the messages, your good pal and one of the absolute legends in law, Chris QC. Chris, from day one, I cannot tell you how much support and guidance that guy gave us. He was right there at the start. And he was just blown away with the messages online that were saying, we didn't just talk about what careers you can have in law. We talked about mental health. We talked about race and equality.
Yes.
We talked about being proud of your background and how you can harness that in your applications if you are worried about it as a student making an application.
Yeah.
And it felt like something special happened as a result of this, and we've kicked on really from there.
Tom, this is an inspirational episode, and I hope people are listening to this and thinking to themselves, I need to do more. Because if you think about it, if all the organizations were to try and make a shift in the way that you made a shift, just think of the opportunity that would open up for so many young adults who perhaps wouldn't have had access to those opportunities. Now, we're scratching the surface. So my question to you is, how can people get in touch with you, Tom, if they want to carry on the conversation or get some advice from you as regards how can they start on the social mobility path now and really lead their organizations with inclusivity at the heart? How do they get hold of you, Tom?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I'm all over LinkedIn. You're more likely to get me through that than you would my email.
Okay.
I think I've currently got a backlog of those. So I mean, look, I am truly passionate, and I know that I'd like to think that comes across. It is, you get to the point in your career. I've done this. I'm not in the twilight zone yet, but I'm knocking on the door of, say, early 40s. I want to, my day job is something that I do well and can do it and have done it for 20 years, but I want to leave a legacy.
Yep.
My legacy is not about, just changing the small world within Browne Jacobson. I genuinely think we can change, the legal landscape and make it far more accessible to anybody from any background, as it should be. So I am actually keen to collaborate with others and hear from others. So do get hold of me through LinkedIn. By all means, try and get us through the work email, etc. I'm not sure if I'm meant to give that out over this one, but I'll give it to you.
LinkedIn, I see your LinkedIn. You are active on LinkedIn, so it's Tom Lyas on LinkedIn. They'll find you easy, right?
Absolutely, yep. And wherever possible, I genuinely try and get back in touch. Am I an absolute expert? No, but look, I've picked up a few things along the way. There's plenty that I would encourage. I'd also signpost people towards the Social Mobility Commission, which is the government arm of the social mobility. They released a toolkit, a 45-page or 46-page toolkit recently for employers. It's a great start. It's an absolute, if you've never thought about this will give you things for free, templates, everything that you want to really kick on and start your own journey of changing social mobility within your organization.
Tom, this episode is jam-packed full of, I think, inspirational nuggets. And I just want to say a massive thank you to you for championing this issue of social mobility. And it's a massive shout out to Browne Jacobson as well. There's that lawyer in me. It's incredibly, gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling as well. I have 2 teenagers to know that really there are organizations now really looking at how can they be truly inclusive. So it is a huge round of applause to Browne Jacobson and the support they've given you in order to lead the way. So kudos to all of you.
Thank you ever so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
And I hope you'll come back and see us soon on the Leadership Enigma.
Join us again next week for more tips and strategies on the Leadership Enigma. We'd love to hear your comments on today's show, as well as suggestions for future topics and guests. Get in touch with your host on LinkedIn or visit the dedicated website, www.leadersenigma.com, powered by Transform Performance International, where you can access our exclusive learning, including books, videos, bonus content, assessments, and more. Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on all your major podcast platforms. Thanks for listening.